25th, 2026, Megan Thee Stallion, Grammy winner, entrepreneur, one of the most powerful women alive, opens Instagram. No publicist, no press release, no warning. Just this. Cheating had me around your whole family, playing house, got cold feet, holding you down through all your horrible mood swings and treatment toward me during your basketball season. Now you don't know if you can be monogamous. Then she signed off. I need a real break after this one. Bye, y'all. And the man she was talking about? The four-time NBA champion, the Splash Brother, the man she called, on record, in public, repeatedly, the nicest person she had ever met in her entire life. This isn't just a celebrity breakup. This is the story of what happens when the nice guy turns out to be the same story with better PR, DY. To understand why this broke the internet, you have to understand what these two people mean, not just who they are, what they mean. Klay Thompson, born in Los Angeles, February 8, 1990, son of Michael Thompson, himself an NBA champion. So basketball wasn't a hobby for Klay. It wasn't a plan B. It was bloodline. He played at Washington State, got drafted 11th overall by the Golden State Warriors in 2011. And then he became one of the greatest shooters the game has ever seen. 4 championships, 5 All-Star selections. Him and Steph Curry, the Splash Brothers, one of the most iconic duos in NBA history. But here's what made people root for Klay beyond the rings. 2019 NBA Finals. He tears his ACL. The very next season, he tears his Achilles. 2 catastrophic injuries, back-to-back. 2 full years lost. And then, he came back, still shooting, still competing, still Klay. That story alone made him untouchable in the court of public opinion. But by 2025, the Warriors moved on. He signed with the Dallas Mavericks. The dynasty chapter officially closed. And what followed on the court? We'll get to that. Megan Thee Stallion, born Megan Jovan Ruth Pete, Houston, Texas. Her mother was a rapper, so she didn't stumble into this life. She was built for it. Viral freestyles, raw talent. A brand that was entirely, unapologetically her own. Hot Girl Summer. Savage. Body. Hiss. Grammy winner. Harvard commencement speaker. Business owner. Cultural force. By every metric, one of the most successful artists of her generation. But success came wrapped in pain. In 2020, she was shot by rapper Tory Lanez. What followed was years of legal battles, relentless public scrutiny, and an internet that, shockingly, turned on her. A woman who had been shot became the villain in her own story. She fought, she testified, she won. And then, just as the world was finally letting her breathe, she met someone.
We met, and it was such a meet cute. It was like a fucking movie. I won't tell you how, and I won't tell you when, but it was a movie.
Window made millions of people exhale. On paper, these two made no sense. The stoic, soft-spoken athlete and the loudest, most fearless woman in music. But that's exactly why people couldn't look away, because what they saw wasn't a mismatch. They saw a story, a woman who had survived the worst the industry could throw at her, finally standing next to someone who seemed safe. The contrast was the point, and for a while, it felt like the contrast was the magic. But here's what nobody was saying out loud yet. The same things that made them look perfect together on camera, were the exact things that would make the fallout devastating. Every great love story has an origin, and Megan Thee Stallion, a woman who raps about everything, went completely, deliberately vague about this one. Think about that for a second. This is a woman who has built an entire career on being unfiltered. She raps about her life, she posts her life, she is her life. And this man had her going full rom-com. Protective, guarded, smitten. That alone told you something. What we know is that by the summer of 2025,
they stopped hiding. Klay Thompson, one of the most private men in the NBA, hard-launched the relationship. Not a hint. Not a subtle like on a photo. A full, deliberate, public declaration. He posted her first, and then they made their red carpet debut together. Official. Front-facing, no ambiguity. The internet didn't just react, it erupted. Because what people were seeing wasn't just two famous people dating, they were seeing something that felt almost impossible in this era. A high-profile man who was proud to be seen with her. No games, no plausible deniability, no, we're just friends. He claimed her, publicly, first. And for Megan specifically, after everything she'd been through, that meant something. And the early content of this relationship? Shockingly wholesome. No clubs, no drama, no chaos. Workout videos, together. Golf outings, food reviews of his favorite spots. She posted on Facebook, with nothing but the words, Klay Day. That's it, 2 words. The internet lost its mind. By October 2025, she was posting content that strongly implied they were living together. And she couldn't stop talking about him. On red carpets, in interviews. She called him, again and again, the nicest person she had ever met in her entire life. Not, he's great. Not, we're having fun. The nicest person in her entire life. From a woman who has seen the absolute darkest corners of this industry. That is not a throwaway line. That is a woman who thought she had finally found solid ground. That's not what you do when something is casual. That's what you do when you're building something. Or when you think you are. The world had a front row seat to what looked like a blueprint. 2 massive careers. 2 people who genuinely seemed to like each other. No manufactured red carpet energy, no obvious PR play. Just 2 people building something real. And the public? They didn't just watch, they invested. Women who had watched Megan suffer for years were rooting for her, loudly. Men who respected Klay's legacy were nodding along. Even the skeptics were quiet for a while, because sometimes a story just looks right. But here's what no one was tracking in real time. While the world was watching the highlight reel, something else was happening off camera. And it was coming. Here's where it gets complicated. Because this relationship didn't exist in real life. Not really. It existed on the internet. And the internet, as always, had 2 completely different shows running at the same time. Show 1. For a massive portion of the public, especially women, especially Black women, this relationship felt like a victory. Not just a celebrity couple win, a cultural win. One creator captured the mood perfectly, not to get parasocial, because at the end of the day, we don't know these people. But the bar has, in fact, been raised. He hard-launched the relationship. He made their red carpet debut. And she cannot stop gushing about this man. I am weirdly very invested. It seems like they are so great for each other, and I'm obsessed. That energy was everywhere, because people weren't just watching 2 celebrities date, they were watching a woman who had been shot, dragged, doubted, and dissected for years. Finally standing next to someone who treated her like she was worth protecting. That hit different. For a lot of people, it hit deeply different. Show 2, running simultaneously, in a different corner of the internet entirely, was a completely different narrative. And this one was ugly from the jump. A faction of online commentators, specifically in the alpha male, red pill, manosphere space, immediately started dissecting the relationship. Their argument, roughly, Megan has masculine energy. Klay is a nice guy. Nice guys get used. This ends badly for him. Now, let's be clear. These are opinions from a specific ideological corner of the internet. Not journalism, not facts, not analysis, opinions. But they reached millions of people. And the language some of these commentators used to describe Megan, dehumanizing doesn't cover it. Bird ran through, not wife material. Her music, pro-confidence, pro-women, pro-body, was being used as a character indictment, as if a woman who raps about her own life somehow deserves whatever pain comes her way. Meanwhile, her Grammy, her Harvard speech, her business portfolio, her survival of one of the most public and painful ordeals a celebrity has ever faced. None of that factored in. Just the music, just the image, just the narrative they'd already decided on. Here's the contradiction that defined this entire public chapter. The same internet that was making relationship goals edits of Megan and Klay was also, in a different tab, calling him a fool for being with her. No consistent narrative, just noise. And inside that noise, 2 real people were trying to build something, while millions of strangers had already decided how it was going to end. But here's what the fan edits weren't capturing, and what the critics weren't seeing either. Klay Thompson was in the middle of his first season with the Dallas Mavericks. A new city, a new team, a new chapter. For a man who had spent 13 years building a dynasty in Golden State, this was not a small transition. And on the court, things were not going the way anyone, including Klay, had hoped. The performances were declining. The shots weren't falling the way they used to. The Mavericks eventually made a decision that no four-time champion ever wants to face. They moved him to the bench, and the internet, which had been watching this relationship like a primetime show, immediately found someone to blame. It wasn't the injuries, it wasn't the age, it wasn't 13 seasons of wear on a body that had been through 2 catastrophic tears. No, it was her. Let's talk about what happened next, because this is where the nice guy narrative got its first real test. And for a moment, he passed it. For a moment. On an episode of Barstool Sports Hooping and Hollering, Patrick Beverley and others started breaking down Klay's struggles on the court. A declining veteran, a bad season, a benching. Fair game for sports commentary. But they didn't stop at sports. They went after Megan, using language so vulgar, so deliberately dehumanizing, that it crossed a line most people recognized immediately. The implication was simple and disgusting. She was the reason he wasn't performing. She was the distraction, she was the problem. Not 2 catastrophic injuries. Not a 36-year-old body on the back 9 of a brutal career. Not a new team, a new system, a new city. Her, a woman who, to be precise, attends games, supports her partner, shows up. But according to this corner of sports media, her existence in his life was a liability. And then, Klay Thompson did something nobody saw coming. He clapped back. Not through a publicist, not through a carefully worded statement. He went directly into the Instagram comments, tagged Patrick Beverley, and wrote, publicly, on record for everyone to see. Referring to my girlfriend with that language is disgusting and disturbing. How would y'all feel if I referred to your wives that way? Do better, fellas. Very disappointing. The internet erupted, because that was, genuinely, the right thing to do. Standing up for your partner when former NBA players are using that kind of language, in public, by name, that takes something. The pro-Megan corner absolutely loved it. The she doesn't deserve him crowd had to reckon with the fact that he disagreed. Loudly, publicly, and without ambiguity. For a moment, Klay Thompson wasn't just a basketball player. He was the standard-made flesh. The man who put his name behind his woman when it cost him something. But here's where this story gets genuinely complicated. Because while Klay was defending Megan in the comments, something else was happening in private. And we didn't know it yet. We were watching the Instagram post. We weren't watching the relationship around this same time. Klay was asked in a public interview, "How has your relationship with Megan made you better, on and off the floor?" A straightforward question. A layup, really. The man who had just defended her publicly should have had an answer ready. Instead, he went cold. "I'm not going to talk about that. That's it. No warmth, no deflection with humor. No, she's great, I'm lucky. Just a wall. Instant. Deliberate." Now, some people read that as privacy, boundaries, respect. And maybe that's all it was. But context matters. This is a man who had just, days earlier, gone into Instagram comments to publicly defend her. He was not a man who avoided the subject generally. He chose to avoid it specifically. And when you put that moment next to what Megan would later say publicly, it reads differently. It reads like a man who already knew something was wrong. Meanwhile, the cultural debate was escalating on both sides. One commentator who had been following the story closely said what a lot of people were thinking. There's been some intense conversations among men and women about this, and a lot of misogyny has come to the surface. One of the reasons so many women were rooting for Megan in this relationship is because of all the idiotic, misogynistic conversations that already surrounded her during the whole Tory Lanez ordeal. The level of his popularity soaring because he shot a woman. It was wild to see that in action. And they used her music, her pro-women, sex-positive music, to shame her. As if we don't have a trillion rappers who rap about violence and crime. Nobody says that means they deserve whatever happens to them. So because she raps about confidence and her body, she deserves to be dogged out? That framing cut through the noise because it named the thing that was underneath all of it. The double standard wasn't new. It had followed Megan for years. This relationship just gave it a new stage. And then, there was the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. The one that lived underneath all the fan edits and the podcast debates. What was actually happening inside this relationship? Not on Instagram, not on red carpets, inside. Because Klay Thompson was navigating something that breaks a lot of men quietly. The end of an era, 36 years old, benched. Watching a career that defined him slowly, publicly, inevitably. Wind down. That kind of transition doesn't stay on the court. It follows you home, it gets into your mood, your patience, your choices. One sports commentator someone who has covered this league for decades, said it plainly. The number of professional athletes who, if you asked me to stake money on whether or not they cheated, I could count on one hand, and I'd have to really think about it. That is not an excuse. That is a reality. An environment that normalizes certain behavior is still an environment a person can choose to resist. Having 4 rings does not give you a pass for being a bad partner, but it does tell you something about the world these men exist in, and the pressure that world creates. Megan was holding him down through all of it. She said so herself, later, publicly. She was there for the mood swings. She was there for the hard season. She was there for the transition nobody wants to talk about. She stayed. And then, on April 25th, 2026, she told the world what staying had actually cost her. April 25th, 2026. Megan Thee Stallion is in New York City, in the middle of a Broadway run. Moulin Rouge, a show about love, obsession, sacrifice, and the moment you realize the person you gave everything to was never going to give it back. Art imitating life. Imitating life so precisely, it almost doesn't seem real. On that day, she opens Instagram, and she types, "Cheating had me around your whole family, playing house." Around your whole family. That's not a situationship. That's not a casual thing that got misread. That is Thanksgiving dinners. That is meeting the people who raised him. That is being folded, deliberately, into someone's life. And allegedly, while that was happening, he was somewhere else, with someone else. Got quote-unquote cold feet. His words, reportedly, not hers. His. He apparently told her, to her face, that he had cold feet. After the family holidays, after the red carpets, after the Instagram clapback, where he called defending her the obvious thing to do. After all of it, cold feet. Holding you down through all your horrible mood swings and treatment toward me during your basketball season. Read that again. She is not just saying he cheated. She is describing a pattern, mood swings, difficult behavior, a version of him that the public never saw, because she absorbed it. She was the buffer between his private unraveling and the world that still saw the nice guy. She held him down, quietly, without posting about it, without making it a story, while he was being benched, while his career was shifting, while the standard was struggling to recognize himself in the mirror, she stayed. And she still got this. Now you don't know if you can be monogamous. That line, because it's not just an accusation, it's a confession. Reportedly his own, he told her. He sat across from a woman who had held him through the hardest professional stretch of his adult life and told her he wasn't sure he could be faithful. Not, "I made a mistake." Not, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again." "I don't know if I can be monogamous." The internet did not react quietly. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Megan's supporters rallied immediately. The people who had spent months rooting for her now had their worst fears confirmed. But here's where it gets even darker. Her critics, the ones who had spent those same months calling her not wife material, calling her toxic, calling her a bird, used this moment to pile on, not with sympathy for a woman who had just been publicly betrayed, with satisfaction, as if the outcome proved something, as if a woman being cheated on was evidence of her own unworthiness. Meanwhile, Megan left the show. 2 weeks before her run was scheduled to end, she was seen visibly emotional during her final performances. The show about heartbreak, she couldn't finish it. Whatever happened between them, it wasn't PR. It wasn't a publicity stunt. It was real enough to pull her off a Broadway stage. Real enough to make a woman who survived being shot, who survived a trial that the internet tried to turn against her, walk away from a commitment mid-run. That's not drama. That's devastation. And then, almost immediately, the misinformation started. A fabricated quote spread across every platform within hours. The claim that Klay Thompson had said maintaining Megan cost him $700,000. He never said it. It was invented, completely fabricated. No source, no clip, no context. Just a lie. Engineered to go viral because it fit the narrative certain people already wanted. And it worked. People shared it as fact, as gospel. One commentator addressed it directly and without hesitation. Stop falling for fake quotes. Bot farms see engagement on a topic and manufacture outrage. That man did not say that, full stop. For the record, that quote does not exist. It will not be treated as real in this video. Because the actual story, the real story, is damaging enough without inventing things. Klay Thompson said nothing. No statement, no post, no response. The man who went into Instagram comments to defend her publicly, went completely silent when she needed him to answer publicly. In this era, where everyone talks, silence is its own kind of answer. So here's where we are. A woman who called him the nicest person she'd ever met is now telling the world he cheated, that he played house with her while allegedly seeing someone else, that he told her, reportedly, in his own words, that he wasn't sure he could commit. The nice guy, the standard, the splash brother, the man who publicly defended her honor, allegedly betrayed her in private. And the question that the entire internet is now asking, the one that has no clean answer, is this. Was he ever really who we thought he was? Or did we just, desperately, collectively, need him to be? Let's step all the way back, because if this story was just about two people, it would hurt and then it would fade. Celebrity breakups come and go, but this one didn't fade. It metastasized. Because Megan and Klay weren't just two people. They were a mirror. And what the internet saw in that mirror, it didn't like. The double standard. Let's name it directly, because it's been circling this entire story, and it's time to put it in the center of the room. Megan Thee Stallion is a Grammy-winning artist, a Harvard commencement speaker, a business owner with a brand portfolio that most executives would envy. A woman who survived being shot, survived a trial the internet tried to weaponize against her, and came out the other side, still building, still creating, still standing. And when she chose the safe man, the decorated athlete, the nice guy, the one with 4 rings and a reputation for being above the drama, and he allegedly cheated, a significant portion of the internet's response was, she should have known. She brought this on herself. This is what happens with a woman like her. A woman like her? What does that mean exactly? She raps about confidence, about her body, about enjoying her life, so she deserved to be betrayed? Compare that to the men. We have celebrated artists, household names, who have admitted to far darker things than singing about being a confident woman. And we gave them Grammys. We gave them legacy. We gave them redemption arcs. We called them complex, layered, human. But Megan Thee Stallion raps about hot girl summer. And suddenly, she's not worth being faithful to. One commentator asked the question that cut through everything. You don't wife someone who's a millionaire, a Grammy winner, a business owner with an incredible brand portfolio? That's not the woman you wife? I'm trying to understand. So are we, because the logic doesn't hold. It never held. It's just never been this visible before. The athlete reality. Now, let's talk about something that doesn't excuse anything, but does explain something. Professional athletes exist in one of the most extreme emotional environments imaginable. 82 games a year, constant travel, relentless public scrutiny, and underneath all of it, an expiration date. Every athlete knows it's coming. Most of them spend their entire career trying not to think about it. Klay Thompson, at 36, watching the game he had given his body to, twice literally, slowly close its door, was not in a stable emotional place. The Mavericks benching him was not a minor setback. For a man whose entire identity was built on being one of the greatest to ever play, that position being benched is a kind of grief. And grief, unprocessed, unacknowledged, unspoken, doesn't stay contained. It spills into moods, into behavior, into choices. Megan said it herself. Horrible mood swings. Treatment toward me during your basketball season. She wasn't describing a man who was fine. She was describing a man who was unraveling quietly, while she absorbed the fallout. And here's the part that nobody in the she was bad for his career conversation ever seemed to want to address. She was there for it. She wasn't the cause of the decline. She was present for the decline, supporting a man who, allegedly, was betraying her while she did it. The timeline matters. The facts matter. One veteran sports commentator, someone who has spent decades covering this league up close, said something that should make everyone uncomfortable. The number of professional athletes who, if you asked me to stake a check on whether or not they cheated, I could count on one hand, and I'd have to really think about it. That is not a justification. That is an indictment of a culture where access, money, and travel create an environment that normalizes the worst behavior, and then acts shocked when the worst behavior happens. Having 4 championship rings does not make you a better partner. It just makes you a more decorated one. The nice guy myth. And this is the part that cuts deepest of all. Because Klay Thompson didn't just have a reputation. He had a brand, the boat, the dog, the laid-back demeanor, the man who stayed out of the drama, who kept his head down, who defended his woman publicly when lesser men stayed quiet. We built a mythology around that brand. And we built it so thoroughly that when it cracked, we didn't want to believe the crack was real. Here's the truth this story is forcing into the light. Nice and faithful are not the same thing. Decorated and good partner are not the same thing. Quiet and safe are not the same thing. We project. We watch a man give a measured interview, stay off social media drama, post about his dog, and we decide he must be good in his living room too. We don't know that. We never knew that. We just wanted it to be true. Because if Klay Thompson, the nicest guy in sports, couldn't do it right, then who could? That question is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. What this story exposed. It exposed the impossible position women like Megan occupy. Date someone toxic. It's your fault for choosing wrong. Date someone safe, and he cheats. It's still somehow your fault for not being worthy of his faithfulness. There is no version of this story where she wins in the court of public opinion. And that is the real scandal here. Not the breakup, not the Instagram story, not the Broadway exit. The scandal is that we built a world where a woman who survived everything she survived could do everything right. Choose the right person, support him, show up for him, stay, and still walk away with the blame. We need to sit with that. Before we move to the ending, we need to actually sit with that. Let's talk about what actually happened here. Not the headlines, not the hot takes, not the fake quotes and the bot farms and the podcast screaming. What actually happened? A woman who had been through the worst this industry offers decided to trust someone. Not recklessly, not naively, carefully. She watched. She waited. She described their beginning as a movie. She didn't hard launch him, he hard launched her. She let him lead. She supported him through a brutal season. The mood swings, the benching, the quiet grief of a career winding down, without making it public, without making it about her. She showed up every day. For a man, the whole world was already calling the standard. And on April 25th, 2026, she found out what that had cost her. Klay Thompson will be fine. His legacy on the court, 4 rings, those iconic shooting nights, the comeback from injuries that would have ended most careers. That doesn't go anywhere. History doesn't delete it. He will move to the next chapter, whatever that looks like. And the world will let him, because the world almost always lets men move to the next chapter. Megan Thee Stallion will also be fine. She has been through things that would have broken most people, and she came out still building, still creating, still standing in rooms where people expected her to fall. She will survive this too. She always does. But here's what won't disappear. Here's what this story permanently put on the record. We told a woman who had survived a shooting, who had survived a trial, who had survived years of the internet trying to dismantle her piece by piece, that if she just chose the right man, the safe one, the decorated one, the nice one, it would be different. She believed us. She chose him. She did everything right. And it still ended on an Instagram story, public, raw, alone. So here's the question this story leaves us with. Not, did Klay cheat? The allegation is on record. That's Megan's account. Not, was she perfect? Nobody is. Not, who wins the breakup? Nobody wins a breakup. The question is this. In a culture that tells women to choose better, to be better, look better, pick better, while simultaneously building systems that reward men for being exactly who they've always been, who is actually being held to a standard? Because it is not the man with 4 rings. It is not the decorated athlete. It is not the nice guy with the boat and the Instagram clapback. It is always the woman who trusted him. Megan Thee Stallion said she needs a real break after this one. And honestly, after everything she has been through, after everything this story has shown us, the only response to that is she's earned it. Not the break, the peace. She has earned the peace. If this story hit different, you already know why. Drop your thoughts below. Not about who was right, not about who you liked more, but about the bigger question. The one this story forced into the open. The one we can't put back. She called him the nicest person she'd ever met. She meant it. That's the whole story.